Speed.
In 3, 2. Words matter. The meaning of a word matters. The history of a word matters. Where it came from, what language, what was its meaning 100, 500, 800, 1,000 years ago. These things matter. I remember a few years ago, Rush Limbaugh getting into a tussle with, I think it was some people from the NAACP. Don't quote me on that. It was some black American activist organization. And he said that someone was niggardly. Now, for those of you who understand English, you know that the word niggardly means someone who's miserly, somebody who won't give, somebody who's tight-fisted with their money, a tightwad. And there were these black activists who thought that he was making a racial slur because they didn't know the word. So because they were ill-read and they were looking for some way to pick a fight, they demanded that Rush Limbaugh issue an apology. He said, apologize for what? And then when they found out what the word was, some of them still demanded that Rush make an apology because it sounded similar to a racial slur. Lord have mercy on us. So words matter, okay? I want to talk to you for a minute. We're going to talk a lot today on today's program about the Republican Party and our coming fights, the militant homosexual movement, why they're militant. I'll explain that. Some people are commenting on our show. But I want to talk about patriotism for a minute, and the word patriot. And what does it mean to be a patriot? So, ready for an English language lesson that involves Greek and Latin? Contemporary uses and old uses. You ready? All right, here we go. If you look at Bing, all right, because right now I'm boycotting Google. If you look at Bing, the Bing definition of patriot is supporter of own country, a proud supporter or defender of his or her country and its way of life. Random House has this definition: a person who loves, supports, and defends his or her country and its interests. Number 2, a person who regards himself or herself as a defender, especially of individual rights, against presumed interference by the federal government. Now, I think that a lot of us would think of that definition, but you have to understand, that's a very recent definition, a very recent use of the word. So let's look at Greek and Latin, because that's where the word comes from. From the Greeks, we have patriotes, which means fellow countrymen. It also comes from the word patrios, of one's father, or patris, the fatherland. And all of these come from pater, which means father. All right? So the fatherland, where did we hear that? Germany, right? The fatherland. Remember Hitler would talk about the fatherland? The land of one's fathers, okay? They were the people who use that word, patriot. I'm a patriot. That means that we're defending the land of my fathers. From the Latin, we have patriota, which means fellow countrymen, but that also has the connection, you can see how similar it is to Greek, to fathers, all right? So when we say that someone is a patriot, the original meaning of the word was that we are defending the land of our fathers. It wasn't even that we were defending an ideology. And that's what is so critical right now in this discussion. If we've been reading to our sons a book called Johnny Tremaine. Some of you might have read it. It's just a delightful book about a young boy who is swept up in the American Revolution. And so it's historical fiction. You've got Paul Revere and John Adams and Samuel Adams. It's a great book. And oftentimes they're referring to patriots. But the truth of the matter is that John Adams, Samuel Adams, they weren't defending the land of their fathers. They weren't defending the British. They were revolutionaries. They were rebels. They were involved in sedition. Okay? We refer to them now as the original American patriots, but at the time, they were the Sons of Liberty. They wanted freedom from the land of their fathers. They were involved in insurrection. They were revolutionaries. G.K. Chesterton, if my memory is correct, wrote a phrase, "My country, right or wrong, is something that a patriot would almost never say." And so here's the thought that I want to leave you with. If we want to defend the land of our fathers, what does it mean? Well, our first citizenship is an eternal city. We want to defend the fathers of the church. We want to defend the fathers that are the prophets of the Old Testament. We want to defend the apostles. We want to defend the people who conquered paganism. In other words, our commitment is to a city first that is eternal. And our loyalty is to the laws and the ethics of that city. Then to America. And so the English revolutionaries, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, they were British citizens who were revolting against the British crown. They were revolting against the land of their fathers, all right? Those men were committed to an ethical allegiance. They were committed to following the laws of liberty as they understood them coming from heaven and from the scriptures and from the laws of God, okay? So if they were in fact patriots, they were patriots of another kingdom, and they wanted to bring the laws and the rights and the privileges given by God to men to this geographic area. And that's what we see in the Declaration of Independence. A commitment to the laws of God, the laws of nature, the rights given to us by God. And that was revolutionary. It was not patriotism. It was not defend the land of our fathers. It was not my country, right or wrong. It was not Tories, we're loyal to the British crown. It was considered revolutionary. When William Lloyd Garrison, 100 years later, almost 100 years later, said that the U.S. Constitution was a covenant with hell, there were a lot of people that hated him for that. Because what he was doing was he was casting a very dark shadow on the people who formed our Constitution. And he said that the U.S. Constitution was a covenant with hell because it instituted slavery. In other words, he was not a patriot. He was not my country, right or wrong, the land of my fathers, because the people who gave us this Constitution committed themselves to the continuance of an abominable crime that was a capital offense in the scriptures, because it involved man stealing, it involved kidnapping people from Africa and bringing them here as slaves. William Lloyd Garrison was a patriot in the Christian sense, and that's what we have to always remember. We want to be Christian patriots, which means the laws of God first, my country second.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah?
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.